1. My ex-boyfriend never got to finish his senior year of high school, and ultimately, I ruined his chances of a good life. Maybe. Backstory. I was 17, female, and he was a 17-year-old male. When I met this guy, we connected off the bat. However, he was an incredibly bad influence on me. He vaped, so when we started dating, he got me into it and smoking. Ever since, I've been fighting the addiction. It's actually been 2 months now, and things are getting better for me. And I've even been feeling more healthy. However, at the time, the nicotine addiction really drove me to my lowest and was affecting my work and grades for school. You want to know why? Because he actually told me if I helped him with his schooling, meaning doing his homework and tests, since we were hybrid at school during COVID, that he would do all the great things for me, take me on dates, walks at the park, hell, would even help us with our arguments, since we had them a lot after the high school honeymoon phase. Our relationship became worse throughout the months. I had nobody, and he had all his friends. He forbade me with talking with my old friends and said he would expose some pretty heavy stuff about me. I was scared, especially since he had proof. So I would just shut up and do his homework and try to squeeze in my own. One night in particular, he actually told me in my car that he was tired of me. This was close to our finals our senior year. He was still failing because we grew distant, and I was trying to focus on my own stuff, so he took control of his own homework. He said he wanted to be single. I was obviously livid. I felt used. But one thing that just threw me off the edge was when he said he's going to break up with me, but not until I take all of his finals and pass them online. That he will delete pictures of me nude, as well as keep my secrets that are pretty detrimental. Reminding you that I was hurt. He was my first young love. My world was strictly him. It's sad, so I agreed, thinking he would feel bad and not break up with me. But all things come to an end when you snap. He was supposed to take me to prom and put up an act for my family and his. Not sure why, it doesn't make much sense, but it was a plan, I guess. Anyway, after spending $200 of money I worked for, I got my hair and makeup done. My mom hired a photographer. He ended up telling me he couldn't do it anymore, and ended up taking this other girl that was supposedly his best friend. Yeah, they ended up hooking up, and this friend sent me the pics. You bet I was livid. Now, you're probably here to know how I possibly screwed my ex out of a good life. Well, remember those finals? I made him fail all of them, all 0%. And for fun, I made a Tinder and matched with his dealer. He was pissed at the fact that I had a Tinder. But when I told him he should take a look at his grades, he actually lost it. Started to post all my pictures over Snapchat, told his friends and they told their friends, so on. But the crazy part was, nobody actually cared. I, in fact, had more of his friends on my side afterwards because they thought he was psycho. Little did they know. Anyways, he texted me 3 months into my new relationship, in which me and my new guy are great. We know boundaries and have respect for each other and our friends. Turns out he had to retake every class. His mom kicked him out, so he had to get a job and try to retake those classes. He ended up just dropping out completely and now works at a factory for $12 something an hour, lives in his car. I felt bad, but had no way to prove to the school or anyone that it was actually me who took those tests, and not him, since this was done on his school computer. By far the pettiest shit I've ever done. 2. With school just around the corner, I had to share this wonderful story of when I was a kid. I hope that you enjoy it. While growing up, I, 33-year-old female, was either the smallest person in my grade or the second smallest. I have blue eyes and had really long, curly blonde hair during this time in my life. I had a difficult home life and was malnourished my entire time growing up, so super skinny, tiny little blonde girl. Now that you know what I looked like at the time, let me give you a bit on the bastards who needed a wake-up call. While I don't like bullies, and even though I had a difficult home life, always stood up to them, even when it didn't make sense. There was this pair of bullies that picked on everyone, especially me. One guy was huge. He was easily the biggest guy in height and weight. His friend, on the other hand, was a skinny, cowardly little shit who always goaded the big brat. These were the kind of kids who always disrupted class, pulled my hair and hit me and others, stole food and treats that people had, and were just wicked little warts. This story happened years ago. I was in grade 2, 7 years old, and it was just after Halloween. With my home life the way it was, I rationed and hid my Halloween candy so that I could have some tasty treats all the way until Christmas. Side note, I still do this and my partner finds it baffling. Well, they kept stealing my candy. It didn't matter how many times I went to the teacher, nothing was done. I saved this effing candy and spoiled myself every school day with a little treat, and these buggers were taking my little piece of glorious happiness found in a mouthful of sugary heaven. Every day I struggled while trying to find different ways of hiding my candy at school. I tried giving it to a friend. That worked for a bit, until they saw me getting my treat from her. I tried sneaking it into my desk. These mini monsters told the teacher that I was trying to eat in class and had it confiscated from me. I told the teacher. This resulted in her telling me to eat my candy at home. Impossible with my home life. And there was nothing that she could do, unless she saw it happen. But don't worry, I had one more plan up my sleeve and I came out triumphant. Now to enact my plan, that day I went to school so excited. I had the best treat that I had been saving up to have. I had a few of these treats, but decided to bring the whole lot to school so I could share with a few special people. I was whispering this to everyone, but these two villains were making sure to include that I'll be sharing these treats at lunchtime. That way my friends and I could savor these snacks, and savor we did. Lunchtime rolled around, and I went to get my lunch and my treats to go along with it. Unfortunately, the treats were missing. I looked everywhere and started to get upset that I couldn't find them. That was when the big dumb brute decided to pull the bag of my treats out of his bag and started to brag to his little fart of a friend that he managed to get these awesome treats. He decided to take the red one and throw it in his mouth. Little did he know that my plan was coming to fruition. What he didn't know, or anyone else for that matter, was that he just threw in a whole dried chili pepper into his mouth, chewed the fiery little berry and swallowed it so quickly as to quickly eat the spicy bomb, so then I couldn't take it back. His face went what I would call the most perfect shade of red. He had tears streaming down his face, and decided that the best course of action should be to run to the water fountain and gulp down as much water as he could. For those of you who don't know, having water after having something spicy makes it worse, and you would do better going for some bread or milk. Needless to say, he went to the teacher after he calmed down a bit and told her everything, minus his theft. She then pulled me aside and asked if that is what I did. I told her that I did bring a treat from home that my mom dried herself, that I had in my bag, but I didn't know where it went. She couldn't do anything, but I still got in trouble at home for taking all the dried chilies, and I was grounded for a week. To this day, it was still worth it. These pricks never stole food from anyone and never bullied me again. If I showed up and stood up against them when they were bullying others, they left. They did get better throughout the years and ended up standing up for me once. We reached 8th grade, 13 years old, when my life fell apart. So is revenge a dish best served cold? 3. This happened in the winter of 2019. I'm a figure skater with my university figure skating society. The problem comes over the holidays when I lived with my parents. The ice rink in the city had closed down years prior to this story, and the next closest one was literally in the next country. My parents live in the southwest of England, and the next closest rink was in Wales, and I'd have to take 3 trains and 2 buses to get there. I know that because I made that journey myself in the summer. Around Christmas time, as is true in a lot of places, a lot of temporary ice rinks open up for people who just want to skate on circles. They're much smaller than my regular rink, and the ice isn't great, but for myself, desperate to skate, the temporary rink in the closest town was all I had. I got a ticket to a session on a weekday, meaning that it wasn't crowded at all. There were maybe 7 other people there, mostly sticking to the edges and hugging the side as most new skaters do. I originally kept to the middle, doing jumps, spins, backwards crossovers, releasing my pent-up skating urges before someone on the rink approached me, saying I had to keep to the sides and not skate in the middle. I might have understood this if it was more crowded, but again, the rink had so little traffic that I might as well have had it to myself. Still, I tried to keep to the sides and just do my tricks while skating in a single direction, while doing my best to stay clear and respectful of the others. They didn't seem to care, before I was approached again saying that I had to keep both skates on the ice. Keep in mind, I'd read the rules on the website before getting my ticket, and there was nothing about not being able to skate in the middle or keeping both skates on the ice. Again, if it had been crowded, I would have understood, but the danger was practically non-existent with so few people around. I said I had to take 3 trains and 2 buses to get to the next closest rink, and he said, "Tough luck." Realizing I wasn't getting anywhere and being pissed at not being able to skate properly, I decided to cue malicious compliance. I skated a good distance away, making sure to keep to the sides in the same direction and pick up my skates as little as possible. Then, when I had enough momentum, I pushed down into a forward lunge. Technically, both of my skates stayed on the ice. Just it for my back skate. It was the leather of the boot rather than the blade. As I passed the guy, I twisted around so I was traveling backwards in the lunge, before pushing my front skate out into full splits on the ice, arching back gracefully. Both my skates never left the ice. Then I got up, smiled at the guy, who looked certifiably done with my shit, and left the ice, treating myself to a hot chocolate and whipped cream and marshmallows. The city built a new permanent ice rink a couple years later, where the rink staff complimented my skating, and I never had to go back to that rink. 4. I managed a small franchise beauty salon. It was my first management role I have ever taken on. I built the salon up after a low period. I was well respected by my staff because I was an empathetic listener and understood the needs of my staff. District manager was anything but that. She was originally hired on as a manager of a new location in our district that was set to open a month after her original hire date. She somehow convinced our franchise owners that she'd be a perfect fit for the role of district manager, and was promoted quickly. At first, I did not see my district manager all that much. Remember that new location that was opening up? Well, she would tell me that she was over at that location getting things in order to be ready by the opening date. I took her word for it and managed to run my location just fine without her guidance, even though I was new to management myself. After that location was good to go, she would promise me she would spend a day with me at my location, and when that day would come around, I would get the "Oh, something came up at another location" text from her. I was starting to get a little suspicious. In the meantime, a new manager was hired at another location in our district. This woman became my mentor as she has years of experience in the industry. District manager, as a part of her job duties, was supposed to train this new manager on her role. She gave this woman the runaround too. "Oh, I'll be here today," and then later a text saying, "Something came up at another location." Little did the district manager know that us location managers were talking to one another, and quickly realized that this woman is sitting at home while collecting a paycheck. Our franchise owners too quickly began to realize what this horrible district manager was doing. However, they were reluctant to fire her because they had no solid evidence of what she was doing. District manager caught on that her job was on the line and really started to throw her weight around. She fired multiple employees at all locations who had no previous write-ups. These particular employees were the ones who saw through her bull and weren't afraid to stand up for themselves. She started enforcing purposeless tasks onto us managers. Soon enough, turnover was high at each location. Even some long-term employees left after she started to show up more. Now for the malicious compliance. Eventually, I had enough of putting up with her, and on a particularly rough day, I called her on her bull. I went ahead and called the franchisers and told them everything that she was doing. A few days later, district manager pulls me aside and tells me that she suggests I find another job elsewhere and that she could pull some strings. Well, I did exactly just that, and I found a new job, without her help, of course. I gave my franchisers my notice, and on my very last day, horrible district manager was demoted to my former position and was given a huge pay cut. 5. In the early 90s, I had just come back from working overseas, and as it was December, I needed a job quickly, so I took one in a Turkish restaurant. It was a waitress job, and I truly loved the job. The one other waiter was nice, the 3 chefs were great, and taught me a few tips and recipes I still use to this day. The management, husband and wife, seemed okay at first, but typically didn't want to have anything to do except mingle and drink wine during service hours, never once helping, but always quick with blame. A typical night, myself and the other waiter worked our backsides to the bone, and they'd just sit, watch, and pester the customers. I didn't see a single tip when I worked in this restaurant, but it's the UK, so not compulsory anyway, so I didn't think anything of this at the time. We worked through Christmas, and the New Year's Eve shift was approaching, so the manager asked me to purchase some cloth napkins from a store on the other side of town, which I did. I bought them and took them into the restaurant, and didn't notice until afterwards was shortchanged in my reimbursement for purchasing them. I had to use my own money. One of the owners said she'd had a great idea, and she'd like me and the other waiter to wear something in the lines of traditional Turkish costume that evening for the booked solidly New Year's Eve shift, a shift I was due to start in a few hours. That was the first time she'd mentioned anything about this idea of hers. I mentioned it could be possible, but I'd like to see what she has planned. She produced a cardboard box and showed me first the stunning outfit she'd chosen for the waiter, my colleague. I said it looked amazing, and questioned what she'd chosen for me. Bear in mind I was very slim, about a 5'6" or 8" UK, and about 5'10". She produced from the box this very skimpy see-through outfit that would be more in place in a lover's bedroom. I asked her if she was serious. She said, "Yes." To which I said, "I'm not wearing that." She then told me that I'm wearing it, or I'm fired. So I replied with a simple, "Bye then," and reached for my things. She retracted immediately in a panic, saying, No, I didn't mean that. You need to say." I smiled and walked out. A few days later, I popped in for my final wages, cash envelope, and P45 tax documentation. And the other waiter was there at the time. He said that I'd really left them in the shit that night doing that. I apologized to him very genuine, to which he smiled broadly and said nothing to be sorry for. The management had to help that night, and he even saw some tips. The management were grumpy when they came out to see me and very grudgingly give me my final wages. I can't remember if they gave me my P45 or not, though. The other waiter's reaction to telling me what happened that night still makes me smile to this day. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 170. Yes, it's not quite as sexy as the last video, but what are you gonna do, eh? And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And before you go, please do hit the like button and share the video with friends and family members. If you click on the description, that's show more, or if you're on mobile, the down-facing arrow next to the title, you'll see all the links to the various Hellfreezer things like Twitter, Patreon, and my email as well, which is kingofthecities@gmail.com for any Hellfreezer-related business. And there is a Hellfreezer Discord, but I don't think I have that linked currently. It is available if anyone wants it, so just let me know and I'll get it to you. Or one of my moderators will. They usually check their comments down again. Okay, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, cool technology you know exists but you don't have. I've been looking into a thing recently. Turns out it's possible, doesn't look super expensive, and I think it would pay for itself over time. I just need to see how feasible it is to implement it. I basically want to put a solar panel, or two, depending how many I'd need, on the windows so that I can connect them to my existing fans. Now, the thing is, you can get kits that are basically built with the fan, so it's like a solar fan kind of deal, but I want to be able to connect it to my existing fan, and I don't know if that's possible. It may not be technologically feasible, but if it is, I'm currently looking into it, because essentially the sun would help keep you cool then, and I think that'd be pretty awesome. I was going to say I think it's pretty cool, but I think it'd be pretty awesome. But let me know what you think. Cool tech that's out there that maybe isn't available on a mass scale yet, that you would really like to see implemented on a much wider scale. I mean, personally, I think there's so many amazing alternative energy sources out there that it's ridiculous they aren't more widely implemented. There's, like I said, I mentioned solar power. That's probably the big one we all think of. Although people are still iffy on nuclear power, they're so much safer now than they used to be. So that should be used. That should be used more widely than it is. Then, of course, you've got wind power. There's these cool things I saw. What is it? Wind turbines on motorways. And as the cars go by, the wind from the cars spins the turbines and it generates power. There's some places that actually have solar, essentially like solar tunnels in the middle of motorways, which cyclists pass through. That's really good as well. It gives shade to the cyclists, but it's also pulling in energy, adding that to the grid. And a really cool thing I saw a couple of weeks back now is kinetic paving, where it's essentially plates that go onto the ground, and as people walk on them, that generates power. So many possibilities. Some of these are early technology and will be refined, and I'm going to shut up about that now, but do let me know some of the awesome cool technologies that you would like to see implemented on a wider scale. And leave your answers in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.